everyone, it's Jan with What You Make It, and I am back with another project in our fall project series. And I am so excited to share this one with you because it incorporates so many fun techniques, but mostly it incorporates using what we have to express what we want to feel. And I don't know about you, but when the weather begins to turn a little bit and the leaves begin to change color, I find that what I want to use scrapbooking wise or in my mixed media projects change too. I go from maybe the bright summer colors to those more muted tones. Everything is a lot more organic, I think, in the fall. We don't use as many straight lines and harsh lines as we do. And I want to share this layout with you, and I want to tell you just right up front, it is totally inspired by a gal in Australia named Louise Nelson. She is brilliant. I love her art, and for copyright purposes, I'm not putting any of her art in this video, but please go over to my blog because I have linked you over to her blog, and you will see that I've made this my own. It's inspired by, but I could look at her things for hours. And when you find an artist that you really enjoy, even if it's not a style that you've ever tried before, I want to challenge you to try something new. I'm going to show you a few things here, draw your attention to some things. One is that there's very soft lines. I've changed my color palettes to oranges and reds and yellows. There's splatteries, and I've done a lot of misting and masking. You can see in here I've got some masking that was done. I've used a stencil in here. I've got some really organic things going on here. I'm going to show you that. I've done some splattering, and I've used some products that you haven't seen me use before, and I'm going to introduce you to them. All of this background misting was done with a recipe that I have come up with for kind of some shimmery gesso. Louise does a lot of laying her groundwork on with gesso, and I decided to add some shimmer to it and a little bit of color. So this gold color that you see back here is actually a tinted gesso that I tinted with my own supplies. Again, I'm using things that I already have. The other thing that she does that I don't know why I hadn't thought of this before, but this is not cardstock. This is chipboard. You know, the stuff we normally are covering up. Instead of step-by-step recreating this for you, I'm going to show you the techniques and the methods that I use so that you can do that yourself. You've seen me already create these leaves, and something that is very, very present in most of Louise's artwork is that she does a smaller picture with something that's very organic and round and soft around. Let me first show you how I made my recipe for shimmery gesso. And you can use whatever color you want in here. Know that because of the opacity of the gesso, it's going to make it a pastel version of whatever it is. So if you're really wanting bright colors, this probably isn't the technique that you would want to use. If you really want an opaque, bright color or a clean color, you probably want to use something that is a mistable ink, like Mr. Huey's, Lindy Stamp Gang, or Tattered Angels. But for a muted kind of pastel version, this is a great way to do it. When I was creating my layout, I made two colors. I made one that was based on Gesso, Distress Ink, Wild Honey, and Rusty Hinge. And this one I'm going to make just Rusty Hinge. I'm not going to add the more yellow of the Wild Honey in there. And I put some Biscotti Perfect Pearls in there. So with the gesso, I made the two colors. This one I'm going to make a little bit bigger because I now know that I really love this technique. To make our recipe, we're going to take an empty bottle, and I like using these little craft popsicle sticks. They're great for scooping things out, but if you have a little spoon. Now I'm going to put quite a bit of this Perfect Pearl mica powder down in here. And one of the reasons that I love Perfect Pearls is because they have a binding agent in it, so that when it interacts with water, it becomes its own, it becomes permanent with water. Some of the others you need to add some gum arabic or some other things, but this you just put your Perfect Pearl down in there. Some Rusty Hinge. I'm going to add some color to this, and I'm going to use quite a few drops because I already have a very pale version of this, and you might want to have 2 or 3 bottles of things that you create. So I'm putting a couple of dropperfuls of that in there, and I can add more if I don't like it. Then before I add the water, I'm going to put gesso, and I found that using a little bit higher grade gesso makes for an easier spraying. So just add your gesso in there. You want to kind of try and avoid any of the ink that I've added. And I'm going to put a good amount in here because I really do want the gesso to be the base. We're going to water it down a little bit, but the gesso is the base of this, and it will give it the body that we need for that. Just pour some water in here. I'm going to fill it up about halfway, just so I can kind of see what, and that may be a little more than halfway. And I'm going to run the spray nozzle. I didn't push it down in, but I'm running it around the edge so that I can take that down into the mixture and then shake. You can see what a lovely color we get. Before I start showing you all the techniques, I want to show you my practice boards, if you will. I wanted to try out different products, see how they interacted with the chipboard, because like probably most of you, I'm very accustomed to my products working with pattern paper or cardstock, but I wanted to see how they interacted. I wanted to test some inks, because I wanted to end up matching the red that was on the layout. I got all of my red inks. I had some stamping that I wanted to do, and so I pressed them into the chipboard, let it dry, labeled them, and then when I was wanting to make my color choice, I was able to refer to what they actually look like on chipboard. I didn't know, so I did that. I also checked to see what some of the India inks I am not a calligrapher, but years ago I thought I wanted to actually try it. So I had a couple of inks of India ink. I did some not stamping with and then putting embossing powder, but I just sprinkled some embossing powder and some mica flex to see how that did. I practiced doing the splat technique. I'm going to show you a couple things that you can do with that. And I was looking for things that looked organic together, and this was one of the things that I tried, and I loved these 3 washi tapes, and I used some twine and put it on top. When I put the washi tape on, I'll be honest with you, it was I really love the color combination, and I am like totally obsessed with washi tape right now, but the strict lines of it made it feel a little less organic. So when I put it on there, I thought, well, maybe I'll put some twine on it and see if that helps. Not a bad option, and it may be exactly what you want. I just tried a lot of different things, and that's the fun of this. Remember, I almost wanted to put this in my Creative Play series too, because I wanted to remind us that we want to enjoy the process and just play, and we can't make mistakes. It's all correctable, particularly since we're using chipboard, folks. We turn it over to the other side, we throw it away, we paint over it, whatever. So let's get started on creating our background. I'm going to use the white gesso and biscotti perfect pearl mist to begin with, and I'm going to have my paper towel ready because I use kind of a blot, spray and blot kind of technique, and I'm just laying a bit of this down and then I'm coming back and blotting. I think that gives it a little more texture, and I'm also going to use the other spray that I already had created that was gesso, wild honey, and rusty hinge, and the biscotti as well, so that we have a little bit of that lighter color in here. And I'm going to dry just a little bit, just blot. That will make the two pieces reflective of each other. I just actually cut out some shapes on my silhouette. And particularly when you're trying something new, when I cut a bunch extra, so I put them in a little envelope. When I'm trying something new, I want to use things that I have. You don't know if you're going to love the technique, if it's going to be totally you, if it's not so much you. I mean, who knows? So try and use things that you have. I'm going to use a little bit bigger, maybe overlap these a little bit. I'm creating this as I go, folks. If you've got one that doesn't want to lay down real nicely for you, let's just turn it over and put a little bit of temporary adhesive on the parts that we need to get to stick. Flip it back over and put it down. So I think I've got my leaves in a pleasing pattern. Don't obsess about it. Play with it a little bit. If you don't like it, you can turn your chipboard over and go from a different direction. And this, again, I'm going to keep my paper towel close at hand, and I'm going to start by spraying back a little bit because I don't. And then where I want it a little more intense, I'm going to come in closer. I think it's going to give me a pretty cool effect. I'm certainly going to love using these sprayed bits and pieces here on another project. I bet those are going to show up. So I'm going to pick things up and come back and see what we need to do next. We're dressed in red, and the cast iron skillet is filled with red apples. I want to make sure and get reds into this layout. I'm going to use this same stencil that I used on the other one to tie the two together because the backgrounds are going to look different. Even if I had wanted to make them look the same, they're not going to because the nature of this technique. But I'm going to start with some wild honey and rusty hinge, and I'm going to bring in some fired brick. And I'm going to move the stencil around, but I'm going to do all of my color placement in one area and then move on to the next. So I'm going to use a makeup sponge, and I'm going to start with wild honey, which is my lightest. And I'm just going to go out. I'm really only using about 1/4 of the stencil at a time. I'm going to bring a little intensity out here. And then I'm going to go in with my fired brick and really bring some of that red out. And I'll pick up the stencil and move it over here. Go back in with my lighter colors. I think this is a fun way to add a layer. Okay, so let's do a little splattering, and I used my India inks, but I want you to know that you can get the same effect because look, I was playing around a little bit with my test board, and I found that I can get a very similar response or effect with actually using my re-inker. So if you have a re-inker and you don't happen to have India ink, don't worry, play with what you have. I'm going to go ahead and use the India inks because that's what I used on the other ones. And I'm just going to make some drops. And I used the tip and just touch it. Makes nice little circular. So one of the things that I really like about this layout and about some of the techniques that Louise Nelson uses is that she puts splats, which we have no control over, and that makes it very organic, and you just get what you get and you work with it. And I want to show you a couple of techniques to create those. I am going to practice on a piece here. It's just scrap. It's the backside of one of my other practice boards. And here's what I found. You want to use a dauber kind of thing. And I'm going to show you, if you don't have that, there's another way you can do it as well. But what you want is for it to be really damp and juicy. So obviously with a Starburst stain from Lindy's Stamp Gang, you have a very easy, you just squeeze the dauber, make sure there's plenty of liquid up in it, and then you splat, you get a great splatter effect. And I like that it has the shimmer powder, the mica powder in it. So I will probably use this, but I want to show you if you have any of the Adirondack paint daubers, if you have the Jenny Bolin dabbers, any of that, you can do the same thing. It's paint, it's acrylic paint, so it's a little thicker. So you want to get it started on your craft mat, and then we want to take a brush and just make sure we have lots of water on here, okay? This isn't going to ruin your paint. It's going to make your dabber just a little bit more juicy, and because it already has the ink in it, and we can splat with it as well. So either one of those uses the dauber top, but if you don't happen to have a dauber top and you want to get a similar kind of effect, I'm going to look and see. I'm going to use this red just to take some of your re-inker, place it, put quite a bit there because we want there to be plenty of, and I don't know, a cap from one of your spray bottles or off of one of your little finger daubers. I'm using that, and splat, and you'll get some of that splatter too. I probably let it dry a little bit long, but you can get the same effect with what you have. So please, if you want to do this effect and you don't happen to have any daubers, go see what you do have, find you a little something to smack it with, and it'll give you a nice splatter effect. So I'm ready to do the finishing touches, and for me that was adding a circular wreath made from a die cut and a couple of other little dies made that I cut out of scraps. I used these two steel craft dies. These are both made by Memory Box Company. Had them in my stash, love them. I use them on cards quite often because they just make a nice little touch. But if you don't have that, let's look at some other options of things that you could use in place of that. You could take some floral wire, and if you have the green kind and you're wanting to do the this in more browns, use some of your paint to stain it. You could just twirl it around and make it into a circular shape, and then take your flowers and add them on, kind of making your own wreath. You could use some jute, some twine. You could use some of this baker's twine as well. So again, use what you have. I happen to have these particular dies. So for me, they were a good option to use. That makes, they make a nice soft circular. And these flowers that I'm going to use, you can see my extras that I have over here, I made out of my Prima flowers. I just added some of my Starburst stains, some Glimmer Mist, whatever I had available to stain them up and look really nice. So again, we're going to use what we have. So to finish this off, I want to draw attention to, I love this picture. 4 of them are just absorbed in the bucket of apples, and this one is, it's just too much for him. He's just falling back. So I'm gonna start building this up, and I'm not gonna take the time to put everything down. I'm just gonna kind of show you how I did it. I actually put in the other one, so I'm going to do the same. I kind of put the wreath behind and in front of the photograph, and then used another little sprig to come across over here. And then I just added some of these flowers on top of the wreath, and then some of the little ones off to the side. I used some leaves, some of our felt leaves that we did from a previous project. And when it was done, I was really happy. Mostly I was happy because I had so much fun playing and trying new things. And I hope that you are joining me today, guys. And I hope you've been inspired to try some new things for yourself. And I will be back soon to share another fall project with you. And come join me on my blog. I've got an idea for the month of November, a special series, and I would love your input on it. You all have a great week, and be sure to enjoy some creative play. I'll see you soon.